And, you know, we have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke.
Notice the women interviewed her were not laughing and looked at her like she turned crazy.
Senator Tuberville is dealing devastating blows to the Biden regime's woke military. Instead of just going along to get along, he is using the position voters entrusted him with to jam up Biden's woke agenda. I am proud to stand with his efforts, and I know the American people.
We need to elect adults to Congress, not just people who spout slogans. We need people who can work together for us, the American people.
You know, I met a general. His name was General Kane. I don't even know. Maybe he's not even on my side. Who the hell knows with these generals? You know, when I get through with this guy, Milley, I mean, how about Milley? Remember? Remember when I walked to the church, proudly walked to the church, that the protesters, they tried to burn it down, but I walked to the church, protesters out there, and Milley was walking with me. And the next day, the radical left media starts calling, you shouldn't have walked, you shouldn't have walked. Instead of saying, I'm proud to walk with my president, not because it's me, because of the office. Instead of saying that, he wanted to apologize for walking with the president of the United States. And I said, this guy doesn't have what it takes. And you're seeing that now, because the worst decisions I've ever seen. That's, again, why I put the patent. I just remembered it as I was coming over here. I said, get that clip quickly. The people of Alabama understand that clip. Do you think that... Let me ask you, do you think that General Patton was woke? I don't think so. What do you think, Mike? Mike, was he woke? I don't think so. I don't think he was too woke. He was the exact opposite. You know what woke means? It means you're a loser. Everything woke. Everything woke. It's true. Everything woke turns to shit, okay? It's true. It's true. Look at what's happening.
It takes a lot of cojones to say that word, especially during these woke times, but Trump has no fear and is non-cancelable.
You frequently use the term woke, and you recently said that the word means different things to different people. What does it mean to you?
Woke is a form of cultural Marxism. It's about taking individuality, merit, and achievement and subordinating that to a political agenda based on identity politics. It is effectively displacing the truth in favor of ideology. And I think it's important that we fight against that, because our society does need to be rooted in truth. Don't tell me that a man can get pregnant and expect me to believe that. That is not true, and we can't govern our society based on things that are not true. Second, when that ideology takes hold of institutions, it corrodes the institutions and it produces bad results. For example, when you have woke overtake parts of the economy with things like ESG, they attack energy, they attack other things. The average person ends up poorer as a result of that. When woke overtakes education, you get indoctrination and students end up performing worse as a result of that. When you have ideological prosecutors get into office in cities like San Francisco, they stop prosecuting criminals. The inmates run the asylum. The average person ends up less safe as a result of that. Every jurisdiction in this country that has indulged in this type of leftism, city or state, has failed. How do I know that?
Ron DeSantis saying, woke needs to die, sounds more like a political stunt than a serious argument. It's easy to attack a term without addressing the real issues behind it. Fighting against woke might distract from meaningful discussions about race and equality. Instead of throwing around slogans, let's focus on constructive dialogue and understanding.
Their rhetoric, I might have taken it because of their rhetoric, who knows? I withstood vicious attacks to pick and confirm 3 great Supreme Court justices, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. They're great people. They're courageous people. We've also achieved what the pro-life movement fought to get. For 50 years, they've wanted to get this. For 50 years, they've been working so hard getting abortion out of the federal government. They wanted it out. That means everybody, Democrats, liberals, Republicans, conservatives, they wanted it out, and they wanted to bring it back to the states for 51 years, to be exact. And that's the way everybody, all legal scholars, virtually everybody, they wanted it out of the federal government, brought back to the states. And now it's up to the will of the people in each state. It's up to the voters. They're doing it. And some states will be more conservative in what they vote for, and other states will be more liberal. I mean, Ohio, we love Ohio, but they voted quite a liberal law. Kansas, same thing, very liberal. Then you'll have a Texas and you'll have other places, but it's now being voted on all over. The people will decide, and that's the way they always wanted it. If Kamala Harris has her way, they will have a federal law for abortion to rip the baby out of the womb in the 8th, 9th month, and even after birth, execute the baby after birth. The baby is born. Remember the former governor of Virginia, he said the baby is born. We sit with the mother and we discuss what you want to do with the baby. In other words, if you want, we'll execute the baby after birth. And they have laws, and they want to pass laws to that effect. These people are radicalized, and they're sick. They're sick people. So they're really, if you look at it, they're really the radical ones. And like Ronald Reagan, I strongly believe in exceptions for life of the mother, rape, and incest. I think it's very important. Don't forget, you have to go with your heart. But you also have to win elections. Very important. You have to win. So go with your heart. Do what you want, but you do have to win elections. We have elections that are very important to win. And if you don't do certain things, you're not going to win elections, and it'll be a very Pyrrhic victory. It'll be a victory that's not really a victory at all. But Ronald Reagan felt that. I felt that. Many people feel that. And we really did something that nobody thought was possible. I want to thank the 6 Supreme Court justices, Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, John Roberts, Brett Kavanaugh, Neil Gorsuch, and Amy Coney Barrett for the wisdom and the courage they showed on this long-term and very, very contentious issue. And getting it back to the states puts the question where it belongs with the vote of the people, and it's happening all over the country. You're having the vote of the people. And over time, it will all work out. It's working out at a rapid rate already. You know that it's going to many states are voting on it now, and many have already voted. And sometimes the vote will be as you like it. Sometimes it won't be quite as you like it. But our country can finally come together. This issue has been killing our country for 51 years. As soon as I take the oath of office, I will stop the Biden-Harris administration.
As someone who has been trying to get pregnant for years and had multiple miscarriages, it hurts my soul that almost 1 million women murder their babies every year in the U.S.
Responsible for killing her 1-year-old son, who was coated in fentanyl. His pajamas were coated in fentanyl. His sheets were coated in fentanyl. You could have sentenced her to 30 years. You sentenced her to only 4 years. It's an egregious pattern, but the reason you're put on this panel is the Democrats know that most Republicans will not have time to question you about that terrible record because your colleague on this panel, her record is even worse. Ms. Campbell, I will say I have seen some astonishing nominees from this administration, but I have to admit your record takes the cake. A judge should not be a political activist. Your record demonstrates to me a long history of being a political activist, but not just an activist who affiliates with extreme and radical organizations. Now, when Senator Grassley asked you about the Workers' Dignity Organization, you gave, I think, deliberately misleading answer. You said you did not represent them, and that convinced Senator Grassley not to continue on that line of questioning. You have been a legal advisor to that organization since 2013. That is what you have publicly printed on your AVO biography. It is what has been described in the Tennessee Bar Association when you were nominated. That explicitly says she served as a legal advisor for local workers' rights, nonprofit workers' dignity. Now, why is it you're distancing yourself from them? The reason is because they are utterly radical. If you look at this group that you've served as the legal advisor for over a decade, this is an openly Marxist organization. This is a communist organization. Now, those words are not said lightly. According to their own characterization of their views, this group says there's no election outcome that improves conditions for workers. The laws of this country have never worked for our people, and now that the system is crumbling, we will continue to stand in community and solidarity with each other. The only way we win in a world we deserve is by building a multiracial working class revolution that can push out white nationalism, violent state racism, and the capitalist class that is desperately clutching to hold control and profits as the people rise up. Why have you spent a decade as a legal advisor to an openly communist and Marxist organization? I don't think your microphone's on.
I apologize, Senator. If I could briefly clarify, more than a decade ago, probably for the course of 2 or 3 years, I served on an advisory board that helped this, at the time, was supposed to be a nonprofit workers' rights organization get set up and get started.
Did you know they were a communist organization?
Senator, at that time, they did not express these kinds of views. It was an organization.
So this is new. This wasn't the case then.
Yes, and I have not been affiliated with them in more than a decade.
You're aware that your current profile that you have up, your legal bio, says you are right now an advisor to them.
I apologize for any confusion about that.
So your testimony under oath, and that's all right, the facts will come out, but your testimony, I want to make it explicit. Your testimony under oath is that you have done absolutely nothing and had zero contact with them for how long?
I have not served on their advisory board for...
You've done absolutely nothing and had zero contact with them for how long? Please answer the question.
Many, many years.
How many?
I don't know, sitting here today. It's been many years.
If you look at other statements from this organization, because they are radicals. They are radicals. If you look also, this is the same group in 2020. They called for abolishing ICE, abolishing prisons and detention centers, and abolishing the police. Why did you volunteer for a communist organization that calls for abolishing ICE and abolishing the police?
Senator, I have never seen these comments before.
You didn't know who you were volunteering for?
I was not a volunteer for them at that time.
You were a legal advisor. Were you paid?
No, I was
Then
not.
you were a volunteer. If you volunteered to be a legal advisor, you were a volunteer. Why did you volunteer? Do you support abolishing ICE?
Senator, at this time, I had...
Do you support abolishing ICE?
I do not, Senator.
Well, it's amazing because a minute ago you also told Senator Graham that the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition that has a manifesto calling for abolishing ICE, you said you had nothing to do with it, which is fairly astonishing.
Not answering any questions means guilty and charged. Kick them out of the judicial system.
He says.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Becerra. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate you coming before the committee. To start off, as a Secretary of Health and Human Services, can you define for this committee what is a man?
You're looking at one.
Great. So you are a man. I like that. Can you tell me, can men get pregnant?
Unless you know something I don't, I think the answer is pretty obvious.
What is that answer, sir?
I'm asking you, is there something you know that I don't know that would say that a man...
Well, I'm asking what you know. Can men get pregnant?
I'm not aware of it.
Okay. Well, Mr. Secretary, materials coming from your department, you've referred to mothers as birthing persons, replacing that title with...
Are mothers not persons?
Mothers are persons, but it seems to be more inclusive, like you're trying to include another gender in that.
I'm all about inclusion, Congresswoman.
There you go. Well, you know, just as a mother of 4 boys, I'm not necessarily offended at that. I am a person, but it's just unscientific and absurd.
How so?
To include men in that. If you're going to be inclusive, if you're going to be inclusive in birthing persons, yes.
Well, but it seems to me that you're trying to define the term.
Reclaiming my time. Can men get pregnant? So then we don't need to include them in this. Mothers are mothers. Moving forward, Mr. Secretary, I want to read for you from a document from your office, the Office of Population Affairs. It says in here, and I quote, "Gender-affirming care encompasses many facets of healthcare needs and support. It has been shown to increase positive outcomes for transgender and non-binary children." Mr. Secretary, what is a transgender child?
A child in America is a child in America, and I hope you and I can love that child just as much as we
Can you
love our own
define what a
children.
transgender child is?
That's a child in America, and it's an American citizen child who needs the services and love just the way any other child does.
Mr. Secretary, do you believe that a child is capable of making life-altering decisions to maim themselves?
So let me just say to you that I don't agree with your premise, but what I will say to you is children know much about themselves, and with the help of
Do
their...
you believe that children are capable of making the decision to self-mutilate?
Again, I don't necessarily accept the
Well,
premise of your
Mr. Secretary, I
question.
mean, you have gender-affirming care for young people. So this is something that you
I
have
don't
looked
equate
over.
gender-affirming care to mutilation. So if that's where you're going, then you're not going to get the answer you want.
So, Mr. Secretary here, can you tell me if there have been mastectomies, mastectomies, penectomies, or hysterectomies on children?
Well,
And have taxpayers funded that?
so I could probably use the help of my wife, who's an OBGYN, who could talk more, or maybe Dr. Burgess could help us out here.
For gender-affirming care, to be included in that?
I'm sorry, pose the question one more time, please.
In this gender-affirming care, Mr. Secretary, have there been tax dollars put forward to fund mastectomies, penectomies, and hysterectomies for sex reassignment purposes for minors with gender dysphoria?
So Americans are entitled to receive healthcare services. If they are entitled to receive any of the services that you just mentioned, then it would be against the law for us to try to deny them that care.
So for the record, you favor HHS's funding being able for sex reassignment, for surgeries on minors?
I will do everything I can to defend any American, including children, whether or not they fit the categories you have mentioned or not, and if they talk about gender-affirming care, I am there to protect the rights of any American.
Mr. Secretary, I want to turn to a different document. Your office released this gender-affirming care is trauma-informed care. In this document, you clearly state that gender-affirming care includes puberty blockers, hormones, and surgeries for minor children. You go on to assure parents that there is no scientifically sound reason to doubt hormones and surgeries are helpful to minor children. You also discuss this in a document that the potential for removing children from their parents is on the table if they're not providing gender-affirming care. Mr. Secretary, do you think that parents who believe in two genders only should have their children removed from them?
Secretary, Mr. Secretary, you can answer or respond in writing. Her time has expired.
I can respond very quickly. Congresswoman, I believe in supporting and protecting transgender youth. I believe that they, along with their parents and their caregivers, will make the best decisions. And I would really urge that politicians like you stay out of their business.
I would urge that children get to stay with their parents. No
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
Just imagine a country where discussions in Congress include the question, can a man get pregnant? Something is very wrong in that country. Children can't get tattoos without parental consent. But they can have sex organs removed. These people are sick.
All plastic manufacturing?
I said the plastics industry must be stopped.
So does that mean in plastic manufacturing?
I mean, in my dream world, sure, but I think that, go ahead.
No, so I don't mean to be condescending here. I just point out, what's going to replace your glasses? Like,
So
why
I
would you
do
wear your
know,
glasses around your face? They're made of plastic.
maybe.
No,
I don't know what they're made out of.
They are. What about, and I just point out some things here, because I just want to be realistic when we're having conversations, because when statements are made like this, I just want to open people's eyes and say, well, okay, that's easy to say, but what's the solution? Your water bottle in front of you.
This one?
Yes. That plastic?
No.
The lid is. That's plastic.
Right. So
Right.
I would say to your
cell phone-
question that I would first be concerned about single-use plastics, and then we can talk about alternatives to this.
Your cell phone there, is it plastic?
The cases, but it's glass because I broke
Oh, the components
the
inside of it's
screen
not
yesterday.
plastic? The components made out of it's not plastic? Yeah, they are. The water that you filled that water bottle up with, where'd you fill that water bottle up out of?
A water filling station.
All right, and it was delivered by a drink station that was plastic?
I didn't check.
The edges are. The piping coming to it. Now, you have a couple of choices with the piping. We could go back to using wood, but then you have to line it in chemical. Or we could go back and use lead, because we used to have water piping that was lead. That was harmful to us. We go back to galvanized, but galvanized rust and had discoloration. We go back to copper, but copper has to be mined, and everybody wants to stop mining in the U.S. So you use plastic to deliver piping that you fill that water bottle up with today. I point this out because the clothes you have on, I guarantee have plastic in it. The shoes you have on your feet, the soles of those shoes are plastic. So we talk about any plastic manufacturing, and everybody in here cheers when you say that, but everybody here is depending on plastic as you set. So if you want to end it, then quit using it. It's kind of like, I don't shop at certain places right now because I don't agree with some of their policies. I choose not to do that. You can choose to not use plastic. Do your work. If you believe it, then live it that way. And if not, then tell me what the solution is. Mr. Sunday, can you manufacture a car today without plastic? Because we talked about manufacturing, the chairman brought up manufacturing cars as it is safe, but the components that go into the cars today, can you do that without plastic?
No, Senator, and increasingly so with the new mileage mandates. You increasingly need to use automotive components that are plastics derived.
So we wouldn't have manufacturing, today's modern manufacturing, if we didn't have plastics, correct?
Correct.
Ms. Jackson, do you agree with that statement?
Yes.
So what's the alternative for manufacturing? Because the Democrats talk about middle-class wages. Middle-class wages typically come directly from manufacturing. What is it that we're manufacturing that doesn't have plastic in it today?
Nothing, and you know what? It would increase the cost of everything if we turn to an alternative, and it would disproportionately impact low-income people who have lower incomes. It would be another regressive tax on the poor.
So according to your testimony, Ms. Jackson, it sounds like you're saying that the environmental justice agenda does more harm than good for low-income families. Is that correct?
Yes, and you know, I have the unique opportunity to see
PhD polymer chemist here, plastic chemist. That's a great line of questioning. I should have asked that one lady if she would like to go into a hospital today without plastics, with no IV tubing, no IV bags, etc. If the plastics disappeared, probably 90% of people there would die. No TVs, computers, airplanes, cushioned seats, nylon hose, electricity, think insulation for wires, etc. These people are utterly ignorant and dangerous. She didn't know the frame on her glasses was plastic. That someone like that is at a Senate hearing and giving her opinion is...
This is in Guam, of course. Leaders there recently received an official email that prohibited them from using pronouns or descriptors like he, she, youngest, oldest, male, or female. Why is that? I mean, what's going on?
Senator Hawley, thank you for that question. Actually, that is, we've been talking a lot about that because it was an email, from my understanding, that went out locally from one of the commanders there, and I don't remember at what level. I don't know if it was a group commander or the wing commander there. I believe that it was a Facebook post that went out based on a question. It is not the Air Force policy to not use pronouns. And so I think it was a social media, exacerbated by individuals that said that they were directed for that.
Okay, good. Well, I think that's progress. So you're saying, I'm looking at a news article here published August 31, 2022, saying that PACAF has sent this letter around. Leaders of the base are instructed, do not use pronouns, age, race, etc. And they go on. The unauthorized examples of unauthorized language are male, female, youngest, oldest, he, she. But you're saying that was not an official communication. That has not been a directive.
That is not an official communication from the HAF. Correct.
Okay. And so your position to me is today that is not policy, and that they have not been so instructed.
That is correct.
This is
that
social
is not
media
policy.
kerfuffle. I mean, this is not real. It's not happening.
I don't know if it's not happening, but it is not an official policy from the Department of the Air Force.
Okay. I ask because part of the way it's been reported is that the rationale is to help with lethality and also...
Aren't these the same people in military leadership who told service members to apply for welfare if they couldn't afford food? How disrespectful can they be to those willing to stand in defense of the American people? These people should hang their heads in shame. That's our summary of politicians speaking out about woke culture. We saw some intense moments and strong opinions from both sides. Whether you agree or disagree, this debate isn't ending anytime soon. What are your thoughts? Share them in the comments below.